Imagine walking through a dense, ancient forest. The air is thick with mist. Somewhere nearby, a heavy branch snaps, and suddenly, you hear a sound unlike anything alive today. It's not a dinosaur. It's not a mammal. It's something else, a beast that lived beside early humans, but was wiped from memory long before history books were written. The prehistoric world wasn't just full of mammoths and saber-tooths. It was infested with creatures so bizarre, so terrifying, that they seem like myths, but they were real. And chances are, you've never heard of them. You've probably heard of mammoths. Maybe you've imagined saber-toothed cats lurking in the shadows, their fangs gleaming like knives under the pale Ice Age moon. We think we know the prehistoric world giant beasts, freezing winds, and early humans huddled around fires. But the truth is, that's just the tip of the ancient iceberg. There were other creatures out there, creatures with names you've never learned, shapes that don't make sense, predators more terrifying than any Hollywood monster. And they weren't living millions of years before us. They were right there, sharing the land with our ancestors. Picture this: a bird taller than a grown man, flightless, muscular, and armored like a tank. It didn't chirp or tweet it hunted. Imagine being stalked not by a lion or a wolf, but by the brontornes, sometimes called the terror bird. Standing nearly 10 feet tall and weighing over 400 pounds, it could chase prey down at terrifying speeds. And yes, that prey included early mammals and possibly even humans. Not exactly the bedtime story we were told about cavemen and friendly woolly mammoths, right? And that's just one. Lurking in the swamps of prehistoric Africa was a creature called Anthracosuchus. Sounds like a dinosaur? It wasn't. It was a prehistoric crocodile-like mammal, with crushing jaws and a body built for ambush. Scientists think it may have preyed on anything that came close to the water's edge. It wasn't just long-extinct lizards or giant reptiles we had to fear. Nature was experimenting with designs, some of them beautiful, others deeply unsettling. This forgotten menagerie of monsters didn't just appear and vanish without consequence. They shaped the ecosystems. They shaped us. We evolved alongside them, feared them, maybe even fought them. But their stories were never passed down. They slipped into silence, not because they weren't important, but because they were too strange to survive in myth. And now, as we dig up bones and piece together fossils, we're starting to realize the prehistoric world was far more diverse and dangerous than we ever imagined. Let's go deeper now, beyond the forests and swamps, into landscapes that barely exist anymore, hot, humid, and full of things with teeth. In the rainforests of ancient South America, there lurked a predator called Phylacosmilus. At first glance, it looks like a saber-toothed tiger, but this beast wasn't even a cat. It was a marsupial, related more closely to kangaroos than lions. Its enormous canines extended so far past its jaw that it had special bone structures in its skull to support them. Those teeth weren't just for show, they were tools of precision, used to slice through prey with horrifying efficiency. Then there's Androsarchus, a predator that looked like a cross between a wolf and a tank. Imagine something the size of a horse, with the jaw strength of a crocodile and the intelligence of a mammal. That's Androsarchus. It roamed prehistoric Asia, likely scavenging and hunting anything it could overpower. And if you're wondering why this thing isn't more famous, it's probably because it doesn't fit cleanly into any category. It's not a dinosaur, not a bear, not a dog. It was something else entirely. A reminder that prehistoric evolution didn't follow the rules we're used to. But not all forgotten creatures were terrifying predators. Some were just weird. Take Platybelodon, for example, a relative of the elephant, but with a shovel-shaped jaw. It used that flat, broad lower jaw to scoop up plants in marshy environments. It looked like something out of a surreal cartoon, but it was real. Or how about Macrauchenia, a long-necked, camel-like mammal with its nostrils placed on top of its head. No one's quite sure why. Maybe it helped it breathe while hiding in water. Maybe it was an evolutionary misfire. Either way, it existed, and early humans may have seen it walking past their camps. These creatures weren't hiding in some isolated corner of the earth. They were everywhere, roaming open plains, nesting near rivers, hunting in forests. The only reason we don't know their names is because history forgot them. But bones don't lie. Fossils whisper secrets. And when you start listening, you realize we've barely scratched the surface of our planet's ancient past. So why were these creatures forgotten? Why do we grow up learning about mammoths and dinosaurs, but not about terror birds, shovel-jaw elephants, or the marsupial saber-tooth? The answer isn't just scientific, it's human. We tend to remember what fits into neat categories. Mammoths? Easy. Big furry elephants? Dinosaurs? They're flashy. They're everywhere in pop culture. But the Bronternes? The Macroshenia? They're too strange, too different, too inconvenient for textbooks and children's museums. They don't fit our tidy narrative of how life progressed from point A to point B. And there's something else. Some of these creatures coexisted with early humans. Not in a fantasy way, not in a what-if way, but actually. Imagine what that does to your sense of time. These weren't animals from another era. They were part of our story. Somewhere, buried beneath layers of sediment and silence, are the real-life encounters our ancestors had with these beasts. Maybe they carved them into cave walls, and we just haven't found the right ones yet. Maybe they told stories that were lost when languages died out. Or maybe they did pass them down, only the names changed, and what we now call mythical creatures were once just very real animals we no longer understand. It's humbling to think about, that the world was once teeming with life we can barely imagine. That humans survived not just because of tools or fire, but because we adapted to survive alongside creatures far stranger and more dangerous than we've ever been told. And if these creatures were forgotten once, how many more are still waiting to be rediscovered? Still buried beneath layers of rock, or maybe right in front of us, misunderstood. The prehistoric world wasn't just a frozen battlefield between mammoths and saber-tooths. It was a sprawling, chaotic, experimental playground of evolution full of monsters, marvels, and mysteries. And we're only just beginning to remember what we once forgot. What if everything you learned about prehistory was just the surface layer? Just the creatures that happened to get the spotlight? Now you've met the ones that didn't, the strange, the terrifying, the forgotten beasts that once ruled the same earth we walk on today. These weren't monsters and fairy tales. They were real. They breathed, hunted, lived, and vanished, long before their stories could be properly told. But in a way, they're still here. In fossils, in myths, in half-remembered carvings. In the shadows of the stories, we tell ourselves about who we are and where we came from. And as we dig deeper literally and figuratively, we might find even more surprises waiting beneath our feet. So if this opened your eyes to a prehistoric world you never knew existed, imagine what else is still out there. Imagine what's still hidden, waiting to be discovered or remembered. If you found this fascinating, take a second to subscribe, because this channel is just getting started. We're peeling back the layers of time, one lost story at a time. Drop a comment. What creature shocked you the most? Or maybe, what do you think we've forgotten? Stick around. The ancient world is far from done speaking.